let's sit back, relax, and have a look at some topping Springfest premium deck lists. Over the weekend we had a lot of amazing players topping Springfest, and a lot of people asked for lists. Oh, where's the Messiah list? Oh, where's the Nubata list? Oh, where's this list? So I compiled a few. I think I have about half of all the topping lists. I asked on Vanguardians, I asked a few people on Twitter, put them all together, and here it is. If I missed you, I'm sorry. Feel free to drop your list in the comments down below and I will give it a little heart so people can check it out. But let's go over it. So first of all, we have Gonzalo Diaz in top 8. We have a Overlord list. Overlord is really a slept on deck right now. Like, it has access to Denial Griffin, so a lot of the loops just don't stand a chance. It can go first and randomly kill. It has access to strong Legion plays. Like, this deck is legit. So as you can see in this list, we have a pretty varied G-Zone. I feel like you have potential to go in every single one of these strides. Obviously, Dumjit being your primary one, the one that you'll be going into the most. We have our Denial Griffins, our Absalams, our Defeat Flare. Overall looking good. However, their best moves are, of course, first of all, we have our Dragonic Overlord right up here that just instantly murders. And then we also have 3 copies of the Legion. The Legion is basically gonna copy the other Overlord skill and then you're gonna attack 3 times for a bunch of damage. And a lot of decks simply don't have the hand to guard this. For grade 2s, I want to draw your attention to one very interesting card, and that's the grade 2 10k, the third one in that spot. What it says is, first of all, restrained, and secondly, when you ride over it, the thing that rode over it gets a crit and power. So what does this mean? Well, first of all, by having restrained, you can now damage deny people even under Hoam. That is genius. I'm almost mad I didn't think of it myself. I could have run like the old Stormride Ghost Ship and ride that. Wow. But then also, you do your Dragonic Overlord thing where you ride up and try to instantly kill. With an extra crit, that's even easier. And then we have our Conroe to fetch the correct Overlords. We have our grade 3 Searcher. We have our new Perfect Guard. I'm a big fan of that new Perfect Guard because of the Dragonic Overlord that always puts your hand at a certain number. This PG is always free, which makes me wonder, why aren't you running more of it actually? I don't know, I think it'd be interesting to run more. I see the Crit Sentinel over there, but still, you know, overall a really cool list. I haven't in-depth tested Overlord, so this person probably has a lot of reasons as to why he made certain choices, but yeah, big ups, awesome deck. Next up, we have Maxim Solemn, top 4. Who the fuck is that? Wow, this is a great list. This is made by a prodigy, honestly. So this is my Grand Blue Beatrice control list. I already made a deck profile of it. Check it out on the channel over here. We won't go in-depth again, but yeah. I'm very proud of this list. Next up, we had Karan Patel top 8ing with Blademaster. Everyone knows Blademaster. Everyone knows what it does. Stands go burr. However, one interesting addition here is the Cruel Dragon. So this is a superior ride where if you retire something from your opponent, you're now able to superior ride. This means that if you're going second against another loop deck and they called anything, you can now superior ride and still Denial Griffin their loop even though they went first. Or you can just loop on your opponent quicker. So that's a very strong move right there. I like that little tick. Then we had Derek Daos top 4 and top 3. So he played in 3 regions and topped in 2 of them with this particular Harry list. It was basically designed just like my Grand Blue deck to try and beat certain decks in the meta, whilst being very stable itself. That obviously worked out for him. We see 1 Nightmare Doll Alice and 1 Leslie, so he still has access to those Alice Leslie plays, but he's not really committing too much to it. The primary aggro section of the deck is clearly the Starry Pop and the Dragon. We see the Tricky Assistant and the Popping PG, so that way you can stop all of the loops from going off, essentially. Overall, a very clean deck. I'm pretty sure if you're a Pale Moon player, you know why all of these cards are the way they are. One interesting thing is that he's running the Cray Elemental Overtrigger, and the reason is that the Dark States Overtrigger forcibly puts power and crit onto your Vanguard. So if you're trying to swing under your opponent, you're trying to damage deny, that Dark States Overtrigger can randomly ruin that plan. Personally, in my list, I didn't care. I was like, I'll play the Stoichea one because it's going to be so strong in other matchups that it's worth that trade-off. That worked out for me, but hey, it's good that he also thought of this potential. Next up, we have Eva Kunijayaite. I hope I didn't destroy that, sorry. That's first place for Springfest Europe. I versed her in Swiss and in the semi-finals. That is a Hyuga list. Overall, a pretty standard list. I do have to say the grade 2 on the right, I believe it's from Clan Selection, is a pretty new addition that we haven't seen before in Hyuga decks. What's also interesting is how she used the premium collection Murakumo Stride in order to create one more attack on Nuedaio turns. Some people do that, but some don't. Some play Cyclone, and I honestly think that people are sleeping on this interaction. It's much stronger with that extra attack in my opinion. Now you could be playing Central Arrestor as well. You could maybe be playing the 3k extra crit girl. That way you're also adding extra aggression, but hey, you can also add this on top of that, and that way you have even more. So interesting how she kept using that. Again, not everyone does. Some people prefer the Cyclone, but just be aware of the possibilities. Next up, we have Jamie Alvarez, second place. He's Commander Jamie or Jaime. I'm sorry if I destroy names once again. On YouTube, we see our Fenrir, but it's not the typical Fenrir list. It's running the Vanguard. It's running that weird grade 2. Is that Elixis? I forgot the name. It's running the LC Sentinel. So essentially what that does is LC will make you call Vanguard through Fenrir skill, and that way you also have a Denial Griffin play in your deck, so that way you can out other loops. This variant of the deck is slightly less fast than the WCC list that Derek and I were also supposed to run, but we switched to rogue decks last minute. So this list is a bit more, I want to say, stable when trying to live through regular turns. You're playing more of a normal game plan until your loop, whereas that WCC list will just instantly try to loop every single time. It's useful to know that when deck building, that it's not just always the same deck in these Fenrir loop decks. You have so much access to different things that you may be building things completely differently from other people. Next up, speaking of the devil, we have Toby Jones from WCC, his Fenrir list. This is basically the list that all of us came up with together. He got third place with this, so congratulations. We have the 4 Fenrir, the 4 Kroot, the 4 Glybe, the 4 Witches, and I think this is pretty important. We maxed out those Witches because that basically increased your odds of having the full infinite loop on turn 3 consistently. Without those Witches, without maxing them out, sometimes you would get stuck. Maybe you would need 2 Kroots instead of 1, and so forth. You see the 2 Kazanda, but also the 2 Platinum Wool. So running both of them, because Fenrir can search a specific grade depending on what's in your soul. So by running both of these, depending on what you're missing, you can always search one or the other. It's very possible that your soul only has a grade 2 or a grade 1 to blast out to then start going off. Again, very niche, but it's something you want to be mindful of. Also, this makes it so you're still running plenty of grade 1s to ride, whilst also having plenty of grade 2s to ride. So it's just Kazanda, Platinum Wolf, they do the exact same thing. It's just the variety of grades increases your consistency. Then for the grade 1s, like I said, the Witches, we want to be able to get the infinite loop instantly on turn 3, and this is really the only way. We have our 4 Geldra, 3 Bangle. Once again, you want to get that loop. If you have Taro in hand, you don't want to have to ditch it to then G-Guard it into soul. You don't have time for that. You want to loop and kill instantly. Bangle is the way. 2 Platinum Wolf, we already explained. 1 Zazan, 1 grade 3 Searcher. The grade 3 Searcher was a bit of a flex spot. The reason for it is that, first of all, you want to ride Fenrir, so, you know, if you have 1 more grade 3 Searcher, that's great. But also, it can shuffle your deck. So sometimes you can Geldra, those go to bottom deck, and if you don't want to get stuck, if you can then call the grade 3 Searcher, that lets you shuffle. So if you then do another soul charge, the odds of you charging extra Geldras is increased. For the trigger lineup, again, we have those draws because we are trying to get the whole loop instantly. You also notice we are running the Cray Elemental over trigger because the Keter one can actually deck you out while you're doing a loop. Not necessarily infinite loop, because then it wouldn't be in a deck, but in a regular weaker loop, you could accidentally deck yourself out. So for that reason, we're running this one. G-Zone, again, every single card had its own reason, but I'm sure most of them didn't come up because the deck is just that fast. Then we had Kyle Roberts, top 4. Another Fenrir loop deck. So checking out the list, the difference between this one and ours, we're noticing less of the Witches, but still 5, which is cool. 3 of the grade 3 Searcher, again, maybe he wanted that consistency. We see 1 Bobo. If you can give yourself damage through Zazan, you can usually do your loop pretty well. It's just that the deck doesn't need it to loop, but you know, if you want to run it, go ahead. We're also noticing no draw triggers, instead opting for crits. This way, you do have more vanilla, so your Zazan can go off more reliably, but you are a bit more frail. Now, if everyone is already damage denying you, this might work out great. But of course, if people just start rushing you, maybe you're in trouble. But hey, it worked out for Kyle, so congratulations. Next up, we have Shiro Neko's first place Blademaster list. We don't really notice anything really out of the ordinary. We do see Airmo. Interestingly, we don't seem to see a Tempest Sphere or anything like that. We're not seeing a Zazan. We're only seeing one vanilla of the grade 2, which is interesting. And then the G-Zone is over here. A Blademaster generally doesn't stride, so it is what it is. Next up, we had Notorious set top 8 with a Brufas Gastilis list. So we had our 4 Gasti, our Brufas, our 9 Break Hustler to get through the soul quickly. We have Bobos, we have our Retire Boy, we have our Emblem Master, Creeper, the new Wolf promo that we will be getting in, I believe, Clan Selection. Obviously, you could still get it as a shop promo, but it's just a bit harder to get then for Variant Skiller Tail. Overall, nothing super out of the ordinary with this list. This deck overall is pretty solved. Once again, we do see that Cray Elemental Overtrigger to not accidentally give your opponent damage. Next up, we had Nicolas Moril's top 8 list. This is a Nubatama list. Some people were very surprised about this one. We have our Hanzos. We don't run Jamio Kongo. We see 4 Rinne. So this is a really aggressive list. It's not trying to do any Jamio shenanigans. It's just trying to blast your opponent's face off and then go into Rinne. Everything here is just very beat down. We don't see any control-ish aspects. It's just beat and beat and beat and beat. Very standard plus. Might be ideal if you're running this in V Premium and you feel like you're constantly losing because the deck isn't that strong. Now you have a way to transfer it to Premium if you want to, of course. If you like it in V Premium, be my guest. But it seems to be a pretty easy deck to transition into Premium. Pretty cool to see that top. And finally, we had Mario Diaz top 8, the Messiah list people have been asking for. So we see our 4 Volko, which is of course our V bashing units essentially. We see 4 Freeze Ray. This is crucial against all of the loop decks. We see 3 of the V Messiah and 1 of the older Messiah. I'm not sure why the split. I guess because he's running old Destiny Dealer, so he can maybe search one or the other depending on the situation. But beyond that, it's pretty standard plus, together with, of course, the G Messiah grade 1 and so forth to get all of those multi-attacks going together with Volko. We see the same thing in the G-Zone. It's basically the typical G-Zone that you would expect from a Messiah player. Create those multi-attacks with Volko and just blast your opponent's face off. So those were some of the topping lists from Springfest Premium. Hope you found it interesting. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you soon. Ciao.